Hey man, you'd be shocked at what happens inside a woman's mind when you don't text back. See, to most men, not replying is just silence, but to a woman, silence is noise. It's a story, a question, a mystery she can't stop trying to solve. Because when a man suddenly stops responding, when the energy shifts from attention to absence, it triggers something deep inside her psychology, and that something isn't logic, it's emotion. The absence of your response becomes louder than any words you could have said. And that's when the overthinking begins. At first, she brushes it off. He's probably busy, she tells herself. He'll reply later. But time has a strange way of amplifying silence. Every hour you don't respond becomes a new scenario in her mind. She checks her phone, then checks it again. She opens your chat, rereads the last message, analyzes her tone, wonders if she said something wrong. And the more she thinks about it, the more your silence grows in her head, not as absence, but as power. Because now, you're not the man trying to impress her, you're the man she can't read. And that's the thing, uncertainty is emotional gasoline for women. It keeps them hooked, it keeps them guessing, it keeps them emotionally invested. When you don't text back, she's forced to fill in the blanks with her imagination. And the human imagination is cruel. It doesn't stop at one thought, it creates 100. Is he losing interest? Did I say too much? Is he talking to someone else? Each question digs deeper into her mind, feeding her emotional attachment to you without her even realizing it. When you don't reply, you're unknowingly flipping the emotional script. Because up until now, she was in control. She decided when to reply, when to engage, when to test you. But your silence ruins that rhythm. Suddenly, she's the one chasing certainty. She's the one checking her phone, waiting for that little notification to appear. And whether she admits it or not, she starts craving your attention more than before. That craving, that low-level anxiety, is how emotional addiction begins. The beauty of your silence is that it creates contrast. Most men flood her phone with messages, trying to impress, trying to prove, trying to be seen. But when you don't, you stand out. You become the man she can't easily categorize. Confident, unpredictable, mysterious. You become the emotional puzzle she suddenly feels the need to solve. And that confusion, that's attraction. Because women aren't drawn to what's obvious, they're drawn to what feels uncertain, alive, and just out of reach. Inside her mind, silence doesn't stay quiet for long. It becomes noise. A noise that starts echoing in the spaces where your presence used to be. Why isn't he replying? Turns into, did I say something wrong? And eventually into, does he even care? And the more she asks those questions, the more emotionally invested she becomes. That's the paradox. Your absence builds more connection than your presence ever could. Because now, she's thinking about you in every pause, every scroll, every glance at her screen. But here's where it gets psychological. Women connect through communication. It's how they feel safe. So when you don't respond, you disrupt that safety. You create emotional imbalance. And the mind always tries to restore balance. So she starts reaching out in small, subtle ways. A like on your story, a random meme, a question that doesn't really need an answer. She's not doing it because she's bored. She's doing it because she's uncomfortable. Your silence has shifted the power dynamic, and she's trying to regain it. And yet, the more she tries to regain control, the less she feels it. Because your lack of response creates one thing she can't manipulate: mystery. She doesn't know what you're thinking. She doesn't know how you feel. She doesn't know if you're ignoring her on purpose or if you're genuinely busy. That uncertainty consumes her because women crave emotional clarity. And when they can't get it, they chase it. They chase it through curiosity, through obsession, through subtle bids for attention. She'll start to replay her last message, dissecting every word. Maybe I sounded too eager. Maybe I shouldn't have sent that emoji. Maybe I came off too cold. She starts editing her own personality in real time, trying to figure out what went wrong. And that's the irony. While she thinks she's losing you, what she's really losing is control over herself. Because now, her mind is operating on emotion, not logic. And emotions are unpredictable, just like you. When you don't text back, you teach her something no words ever could. That your time has value. That your energy isn't a given. That her access to you is not guaranteed. And that realization triggers both frustration and fascination. Frustration because she's not used to being ignored. fascination because she wants to understand why. You've become the unsolved equation in her mind, the man who isn't dancing to her rhythm, and that unpredictability makes her feel alive. Women are emotional chemists. They react to how you make them feel, not what you say. When you text constantly, she feels secure but bored. When you pull away, she feels uncertain but intrigued. And in that uncertainty, her imagination creates emotional highs that no message could ever match. That's why silence is so powerful. It's a blank canvas that her mind paints on with her own fears, fantasies, and desires. You become the main character in her internal story, even when you're not saying a single word. Inside her mind, the silence starts to shift from curiosity to concern. She starts wondering if she pushed too hard, if she said something that scared you off. Then she starts to overcompensate, posting stories that she knows you'll see, sharing songs with lyrics that hint at regret, or pretending she's over it to protect her pride. But all of it comes from one place, the emotional chaos that silence creates. Because she's not trying to show you she's fine, she's trying to convince herself she is. If you stay silent long enough, something deeper happens. She begins to see you differently. You go from the guy who liked me to the man I can't figure out. That subtle shift changes everything, because now she's not just thinking about you emotionally, she's thinking about you psychologically. She starts analyzing your patterns, your personality, your motives. She becomes invested in decoding you, and the moment she starts trying to understand you, you've already won. She'll tell her friends, he's acting weird, or he's probably talking to someone else, but that's just her ego trying to protect her. Because what she really means is, he's affecting me more than I expected. And that's the moment most women won't admit, the realization that a man's silence carries more power than his words. It makes her reflect on her behavior, on her tone, on her attitude. It forces her to look inward. And most women hate that. When you don't text back, she experiences emotional withdrawal, the same way someone addicted to attention experiences it. Every time you used to reply, it released dopamine. Now that it's gone, her brain panics. It starts searching for the next hit of reassurance. And when she can't get it, she spirals. That's why ignoring her doesn't just create space, it creates emotional dependence. Because now, she's waiting for something that only you can give her, your attention. But here's where it becomes powerful for you. The man who doesn't react becomes the man who defines the rhythm. Your silence becomes the tempo she dances to. And once she starts adjusting to your rhythm, the dynamic has flipped. You're no longer chasing her validation, she's chasing yours. You've become the prize without even trying. That's the paradox of emotional control. The one who can stay silent always holds the power. Eventually, curiosity turns into longing. She'll start wondering what you're doing, who you're with, what's keeping you so calm. And that's when she starts missing you, not because she's lonely, but because she's lost emotional access. The connection that once fed her ego is gone, and the realization that she doesn't control your attention anymore shakes her to her core. That's when the regret starts creeping in. She'll test you again, maybe a casual text, maybe a "hey stranger," maybe a photo on her story meant just for you. But no matter how she plays it, the message underneath is always the same. I miss the attention. That's the unspoken truth of every innocent text that comes after silence. And the longer you stay detached, the deeper that craving grows. Because silence doesn't fade, it echoes. Inside her mind, the silence you created becomes a mirror. She starts seeing herself, her patterns, her mistakes, her arrogance. She realizes that maybe she was too distant, too demanding, too dismissive. And that reflection stings, because now she sees that the man she thought she could control was the one she should have valued. That's the psychological awakening she never expected from a simple unreturned text. When you don't text back, you give her space to miss you, but more importantly, you give her space to understand you. She begins to see that your silence isn't cruelty, it's clarity. You're not punishing her, you're prioritizing yourself. And that shift forces her to confront something every woman eventually realizes. Attention from every man in the world means nothing when the one she actually wants goes silent. She'll tell herself she's moved on, but that's just her defense mechanism. Because even if she starts talking to other men, none of them will make her feel the same tension your silence created. You became unpredictable, and unpredictability is magnetic. Every time her phone buzzes, she'll secretly hope it's you. Every time she posts, she'll check if you've seen it. That's how deeply your absence embeds itself in her mind. Eventually, the silence breaks her pride, maybe not publicly, but internally. She'll realize that her ego made her lose emotional control. She'll realize that she cared more than she thought. And that realization will linger because women can recover from rejection, but not from uncertainty. Uncertainty sticks. It keeps her up at night, replaying the what-ifs and whys. And all of that began from one simple thing: you not replying. The longer you stay silent, the more she starts to see your worth, because silence forces comparison. Every man who texts too much, every man who seeks validation, every man who chases her, they all remind her of what you're not. You're the one who doesn't need her attention to feel powerful. You're the one who can walk away and still sleep peacefully. And that's the kind of energy women crave, the kind they can't control. At some point, she'll understand what your silence really meant. It wasn't indifference, it was self-respect. It was your way of saying, my energy is earned, not demanded. And that message will stay with her long after the chat is forgotten. Because men who can detach emotionally are unforgettable. They leave a mark, not through words but through restraint. So remember this: when you don't text back, you're not losing her, you're letting her find herself. You're letting her feel the weight of her own behavior. You're letting her experience what it's like to miss something real. And inside her mind, she'll replay your silence over and over, trying to find meaning in it. But deep down, she'll already know you didn't go silent to hurt her. You went silent because she stopped appreciating your voice. And that's the kind of silence that echoes forever.